Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your host, Yariv, Wolok, and my special guests. New guest, actually, I'm really excited, Mike Augello from Hockey Buzz and I would say NHL.com as well.
No. Fischler Report, Full Press, NHL, Hockey Buzz. Yeah, I'm jack of all trades.
Yeah, NHL credited, I think, is what I was really trying to say.
Yes. PHWA member, yes.
Yeah, but it's awesome to have you on. I was saying earlier, it's really cool to have you from watching you. Now I have Russ on here as well, and it's cool. It's like watching Hockey Buzz in real time, so it's fun for me. And returning guest, Russ Cohen. Russ, Sportsology. I'm sorry, from Sportsology as well. Russ, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, good. Having a good day. Hockey's in full force, so I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, it's nice to actually be able to talk about hockey again. It seems like so distant that we were just talking about, like, is hockey coming back? When is it coming? Right. You know, it's like we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's how many people are allowed in the stadium, which is an interesting topic of conversation. Actually, I do want to talk about that real briefly here. Sure. You guys are always pretty good at talking about finances. Do you think that they're actually making anything back on the, I don't know, it was like 20% capacity that they're doing? Do you think they're actually making money at this point, or do you think they're still not making money, I'm sorry, breaking even? Or you think just all losses?
No, they're just, all they're trying to do is mitigate their losses. It's, if they get to the playoffs, if somebody could go 2 or 3 rounds with maybe half of stadium, they might be able to break even.
Yeah. I mean, Russ is right. It's definitely, they're going to lose $1 billion. So if they can make a little less, if they can lose a little less, any dollar that they can make is going to be beneficial. Now, like, for example, they're opening up 10% in Buffalo for their game, I think, on Friday. Nobody's going to go because the Sabres suck. But there are teams that are good, and player and people will actually go to see the Panthers or wherever. But the one interesting thing will be the Canadian teams who will play each other in the first 2 rounds. And then when they go to the third round, if the Canadian-U.S. border doesn't open up, a team like Toronto may have to play in Buffalo, or a team like Winnipeg may have to play in Minnesota. And I don't know how the finances will work out there, but, will people in Buffalo buy tickets to see the Maple Leafs? Usually it's 16,000, 17,000 people crossing the border to see the Leafs in Buffalo. There are a lot of Leaf fans in Western New York, but I don't know how many will be willing to pay the price and take all the tests that are necessary to get in the arena for a Leaf playoff game.
Oh man, as you're saying that, just the mountain of complications that amount. It's almost like we hope that the situation is in a better condition more than we actually have to. Like, almost like I'm hoping, like praying, even though you shouldn't do that. I mean, you should pray, but I mean, like, you shouldn't hope for something like this. But to hope that the border eases up. But you're right, that's gonna be an issue.
Well, I asked Kyle Dubas. He had a media availability this afternoon, and I asked him regarding, because there have been some reports that the NHL, the Canadian teams, have requested or petitioned the Canadian government to reduce the quarantine from 14 to 7 days. They did that apparently during the summer before the bubble, and they did that in January for training camp, but it went back to 14 days during the season. He's basically saying he's going under the assumption that it's going to be 14 days. And if it's 7 days, great. But, he's probably going to be proactive in making a trade earlier rather than later, because, you don't want to make a trade on April 12th. If the April 26th, the player can skate, he won't be ready for the playoffs. So he's probably going to make a move in the next week or so.
Okay. Well, I feel like that's going to loop us into a different conversation, because now I feel like I want to start talking about trades. Well, one second though. Before we get fully into the other topics, I just want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the show. That's Jim's Steaks on South. Jim's, they are Flyers fans. They work with us directly. They wanted to advertise on our site and podcast and everything because they are Flyers fans. So eat their steaks. Keep them in business. We're fans. So again, Jim's Steaks on South. All right. So now that I got that over with, okay, we're rolling into the season. I want to talk about what you just hinted on there, and then I want to go into the Flyers. So you're talking about all these changes. We have all these issues here with COVID. You're talking about bodies moving. This is at a crucial time, and not just for the Flyers. It's a very competitive year. highly competitive. There's a lot of teams that might make the playoffs, the Flyers included in that. There are going to be moves made. The trade deadline is not that far away, but with these border issues, do you guys anticipate moves kind of maybe happening now, maybe a little bit sporadic, like a trade deadline going away type of concept, and it's more maybe a trade month type of thing?
Yeah, I think
Russ?
by the end of the month. I think by the end of the month, teams are going to start making moves, especially if they have to go cross border. With the Flyers, like let's say they do something with Nashville, they might be able to get away with like the 4 negative tests and a little bit longer than that, but not much longer than that. So there is a benefit for trading, in the U.S. And so that's something that could be of benefit to both of those teams, although Nashville's out of it. But just to see what the guys look like. As far as the teams in the North, if I'm them, I'm trading in the North. I'm looking at Ottawa. I'm looking at the bottom dwellers in the North and trading with them so I don't have to worry about the quarantine. I know you're limiting yourself a little bit, but again, the real issue is I don't want to put out major assets for a guy that's going to play, 7 to 8 games before a trading deadline and hope I make the playoffs. Now I've lost those assets no matter what if I don't. So I that's how I would work it.
Well, it's making me think something. I'm sorry, Mike. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I feel like that's going to make the valuations for the trades, like what actually the value because, okay, I'll throw a curveball at you, right? Okay, so let's say I'm an outside team division where I'm going, well, I have to put up with that headache, so I'm going to give you less. Or the team is locked in and they're like, oh, I have to trade with Ottawa. Their deal isn't that good. They're willing to buy last minute, right? It's like all these weird scenarios that I can kind of come up with.
In the North Division, I think that's the case because you have one definite team in Ottawa that's going to be selling, and they have veteran players like Gabranson and Dzingel who are UFAs. Vancouver has always been a strange cat because their ownership has never wanted them to sell. Now, I think realistically they should sell because I don't think they're good enough to catch up in this race, but they may come up against some hesitancy when it comes to, allowing Jim Benning to sell some of their rentals like Tanner Pearson or Brandon Sutter. It might be worth it. And the thing is, there are a ton of sellers this year because of the budgetary realities of the NHL. Teams like Buffalo or teams like Detroit, they're probably very anxious to move players off their roster because then they don't have to pay their salaries for the rest of the year, or at least pay a lower percentage. So I would think that the buyers, and there are very few buyers because I think there are very few teams that are willing to spend more money. I think that they're in a position where they can sort of sit back and wait, but the Canadian teams might not be in that position because they don't know about the border situation. So they almost have to on purpose be proactive because of the border constraints.
Yeah, and that makes sense but it almost like complicates things because it almost like, does it make you want to make a move or does it make you want to? So, okay, like I was thinking about it earlier today, and let's talk about the Flyers for a little bit here. I was thinking about if I'm Chuck Fletcher, I look at the division. It's a tough division, okay? The teams that are in there, all 5 of the top teams right now, and I would say the Rangers are a pretty good team, but they're probably not a playoff team. But all top of that 5, those top 5 teams, it's a risk. You're still taking a risk. So if you go out and you shell, even say like a first-round pick, right? And let's say you get a decent guy. Let's say you don't make the playoffs, and maybe you shelled more than a first-round pick, and you still didn't make the playoffs. Is this the type of year to make that type of deal where maybe you can get away with it and be less aggressive this year and then choose to be more aggressive next year? Now, if I'm Chuck Fletcher, I'm thinking I have a good team and expectations are high. I should be making a move. But do you guys see any of that kind of maybe the game of maybe even opting out of the headache of that rush?
No, I don't think he'll opt out. I think there's too much pressure from Comcast to opt out. But yeah. I also think he's going to want a guy with term if he's going to give up something good. Right. If you're getting a UFA, you're not getting what you really need. You're just getting a plug. And that's not really going to help the Flyers go far in the playoffs. If they want to get somebody that's going to help them go far in the playoffs, if they want to get Ekholm, if they want to get Savard, if they want to get players like that, then they are going to have to give up real assets. And yeah, you only get the guy for a year after this, but you get him for 2 playoffs, and that's better than getting a UFA that basically just gives you more depth, but doesn't really solve a problem. Because again, the Flyers haven't solved their problem. They've had the same problem since the offseason.
Yeah. And it's totally understandable, right? It's the Matt Niskanen gap left over there. Mike, let me ask you something. And I'm going to ask you this because we're here in Philly, and Russ is always around the Philly crowd, obviously, too. But, we have these locked in, these same players, Savard, Hjalmarsson's been thrown around, Ekholm. Is there anybody else that you see out there? And I'm going to throw out a name here that's not available, but obviously he's a Leaf, and TJ Brody is a guy, I think a lot of that is maybe Canada. He's a guy I really wanted to see the Flyers go after. He's a guy that maybe I thought would come over here. But do you see any guys like that, maybe of his caliber, that's available that we didn't mention?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe Rasmus Ristolainen in Buffalo, but he just came off a serious COVID situation and lost bunch of weight. He's playing, but he's not playing up to the level that he played earlier in the year. He's got a year left, like Ekholm, and it's possible as part of the general flushing that may happen of the Sabres organization that they decide they move Ristolainen and bring in somebody different, just to change sort of the chemistry. But I think the Flyers are limited to rentals and guys with 1 year because of the cost. But the question I've been pondering and throwing back at Russ and Ek on the Buzzcast is, are the Flyers a Ekholm away from being able to beat the Islanders or Washington?
That's the big question.
And I don't know if they are. I mean, it's like, okay, that eliminates one big issue. You're replacing Niskanen with a steady two-way defenseman in Ekholm, or if you go rental, Savard. Okay, now you still have the questions about Carter Hart and how consistent he is. You still have the questions about consistency up front. I don't know whether they're just an Ekholm away from being able to beat those teams. Who is it, Russ, that they've had not beaten in, or is it Boston not beating the Islanders? I think there was a team with the Flyers
in a while. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, that's the question that Chuck Fletcher has to answer, because if he's going to trade, good young assets like a Cam York or a first round pick or some of their other prospects, the organization was left very deep by Ron Hextall. But do you want to squander some of those prospects on a guy who maybe plays for you for just the rest of this year if it's a rental, or a guy for 1 year? But yeah, are you serious enough? Are you good enough to be able to beat those teams in that division?
I'll tell you what it's going to come down to. I think Dave Scott and others from upstairs are basically going to put in the plain language to Chuck Fletcher. How many home playoff games can you make if we make these trades? And that's, I think, what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, no, I think they're. I know I worked for Comcast. I mean, they're going to be aggressive. I think a deal can be made. I think the Flyers can afford to lose their first round pick this year, so I think they can afford to do that. And maybe they don't have to give up a guy. I don't think York is going to be the guy, but maybe Zamula might be a guy we have to move in that trade, which I don't think the Flyers are interested in moving. But he's going to be an ask. That's the type of guy. Or is a guy like Phil Myers going to be an ask? I don't know, but I think I want to go to your initial point here, Russ, and this is where. I'm sorry, Mike. And this is where my head is at. If you are a team that needs one player to make the playoffs or to think that you can win a cup, you're not a cup team. That's my opinion. If you want to bring in that guy to take you over the edge where you're like, we already are a really good team and we think we might be able to win the cup.
Right.
But I want to make sure I win the cup, or at least in my head. That's how I see this deal making. So even though I would say, even on paper, even though you could argue the Flyers have a lot of potential in places, Carter Hart hasn't had the best season. Obviously, Nolan Patrick's recovering. Lindblom definitely recovering, right? All these factors. And that's why I was saying earlier, do you even want to be that aggressive? Because is your team even playing well enough to justify a big move? Because is it going to really set them over the edge to win a Stanley Cup or to make it to the second round even, or is it just going to get you barely in? I would say barely in is maybe even worth it too. But, what do you guys think?
The motivation. Oh, go ahead, Russ. Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to say, I mean, if you want to make it to the conference final on the Stanley Cup, then you need Drew Doughty, and you can't get Drew Doughty because that would probably make Carter Hart feel a lot better mentally too. So
amazing.
Honestly, you're really going to get into the second round and maybe you get in, you get that, you run that series long. I don't even know if they can win a second round series. Like, that's where I'm at.
Well,
even with
not playing the way they are, like the way they're playing
is,
right now. Sorry.
The hope is going to be, Hart's better down the road, and maybe with a little better defense, it will be. But if it isn't, and it's going to be up and down,
Right.
and they may have to use Elliott, they're probably not getting out of the second round. And there's no guarantee that even if Hart's right, they get out of it, but they'd have a better chance.
I mean, the unknown factor here is Philadelphia going to go on that run like they did late in the season last year?
That's the key.
I mean, we don't know. Right now, it doesn't seem possible because things haven't fallen in place, and it doesn't seem possible unless they get that defenseman. But what you're talking about is sort of the Tampa Bay model. They were a contender for the Stanley Cup, and what did they do? They went out and traded Nolan Foote and a first-round pick to get Blake Coleman, and then traded a first-round pick to get Barclay Goodrow, and they overfilled their team, but they needed that third line desperately in the playoffs in a couple situations. So, but I don't know how many teams are that motivated to go that deep in the play. I mean, I'm sure everybody wants to win and everybody wants to get to the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals, but monetarily, and Comcast, I'm sure, is interested.
That's awesome.
I'm sure Bell and Rogers with the Leafs are interested because it's programming.
Because they always need the money.
Right. But other teams might not be as motivated because the gates are not going to be there. Even if Tampa Bay makes the Stanley Cup final, what are they going to have, 30% at Amalie Arena? It's not going to be that much of a profit margin for them.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. And that's the thing I've been thinking about, because you see all these trade rumors going around, and I'm just like, it's such a complicated. Like, if I was a GM this year, do I have any leeway from Comcast? I totally agree with your analysis there, Russ. Like, I mean, I know Comcast. They're aggressive. They're going to want to be aggressive. They're going to want to win. They're not going to be interested. So I do expect the Flyers to make a move. I would be happy with a guy like Ekholm. So let me ask you guys this: if Ekholm comes in, do you see it kind of creating the same momentum that maybe Matt Niskanen? He had a lot of poise. I always loved Matt Niskanen even before being a Flyer. Do you guys think Ekholm is that type of guy, or even the other? I don't think Savard is. I know he's a good defenseman, but maybe even a guy like Hjalmarsson. I know they got to move money.
Yeah, I think Hjalmarsson's too slow. I think he could do something on the third pair. Can't do anything on the. You bring in Hjalmarsson, it's the same thing as having Justin Braun. There's nothing wrong with having those guys, but you can't play on the top pair with that. I think Savard actually is most like Niskanen, where you're not expecting much offense anymore, but he does block shots and he can play physical. Ekholm's the better skater, brings you a little offense, definitely the better puck mover, not really physical. So nobody's really, you're not going to like this answer, but nobody on this market that we're talking about is really going to replace Matt Niskanen.
I agree with that.
Well, I don't know if Ekholm's the best fit. I mean, I always wonder about the left-right matchup when it comes to defensemen, and Savard is a righty, and Savard plays top 4 minutes with Columbus. So he conceivably could pair with Provorov. Or if you want to move Myers up to the top pair and have him play with Sanheim, then that would work too. Ekholm is a lefty. I don't know whether he's played a lot of right defense in Nashville. You'd be asking him to adjust to a different situation. And I know very well with the Leafs a couple years ago when they traded for Jake Muzzin, and everybody assumed they were going to put Jake Muzzin on the right side with Morgan Riley, and he's a left shot, and he said he was open to it. And after 2 games, they put him on the left side. So it didn't work. So you have to find, if you're going to make a trade and make an investment, you have to make sure that it's somebody who fits with Provorov. Otherwise, all you're doing is reshuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed that. And I think it's unfortunate the play of, and I'm going to pick on Phil Myers right now because I've always been really high on him, but his play has just not been up to par, not the same way physically. And that's a big problem. You guys mentioned that about Ekholm, and that is a really good point. He's not the most physical defenseman. Maybe Savard is a better fit. Hjalmarsson, obviously, probably earlier. I don't know who's available, but I see the same problem. That's why I don't really jump on any of these trade
with Myers
rumors.
He's a young guy that hasn't played a lot of games at really any level. Talking about juniors, talking about AHL. He's jumped from place to place. He's skipped around. And the problem is you could see when they move him up and he's playing up in the lineup, he's doing a lot of thinking out there. And this modern age NHL defenseman, they can't do that. You can't think while you're doing it. It's all got to be instinctive. Otherwise, you have gaffes. And I think that's really the issue. If you were asking Phil Myers to play, third pairing, it wouldn't be a problem. If you were asking him even to just stay on the second and play fewer minutes, I don't think it would be a problem. But the more they use him, the more he's thinking. And I think that's just, some defensemen take to like 24, 25 to really get to that point.
I don't think, and I think that is what's happening with him. I just don't think he's ready. I was hoping it was. I thought he took a larger step forward, but makes a lot of mistakes. And it's the same thing you're saying. It's just you can't be thrown in that position and make mistakes, especially when you're young. You lose confidence. I mean, we saw what happened to Ghost. He's lost a couple seasons due to confidence and injuries and stuff like that. And Phil Myers might be a little injured too. What about Sanheim? He hasn't had the best season so far. He's had some good nights. I don't want to say he's been a detriment in any way. He's still, I would argue, the Flyers' second best defenseman. But do you think, I guess, missing Niskanen? Mike, I don't even know from an outsider. Have you noticed a drop in Sanheim's play?
I haven't seen as many Flyers games as I'd like to.
Okay.
In the games that I have seen, I haven't picked up on a real significant drop, but I know that, he's at a crossroads right now where I think he's in the final year of his contract, and it's going to be a situation where, they have to make a decision whether to pony up and sign him to a long-term deal. He's making $3.25 right now. And Russ, I don't know whether Fletcher is going to be willing to spend significant money to sign Sanheim long-term. That's why I think we heard Sanheim's name in some speculation before the season started.
Listen, I'll tell you, as much as Ron Hextall loves Sanheim, if he gets dealt, he'll get dealt again to Pittsburgh. They'll be all in on him. No, they will. I mean, this has happened to the Flyers before. I forget what it was a couple of years ago in the playoffs. Oh, it was a defenseman who got dealt, and he got dealt to Pittsburgh.
Dealt to Pittsburgh. Mark Streit.
Mark Streit. That's what happened. I could see it happening again. And the issue with Sanheim is, I don't think he is taking as many chances lately. Like, he's not jumping up in the play and trying to score as much lately because he knows he has had too many turnovers. And I think that's something that he is now very worried about when he's playing. And his physical play has not picked up at all. And I would have thought he's never going to look like a buff guy, but you definitely could get stronger or at least do better stick work to keep guys away from the puck or keep anybody away from crashing the net, because everybody crashes the net on the Flyers, and he hasn't done a good job with that at all.
He did it better last year, though, right? It's like
for whatever reason. Again, I will tell you, this year, I call it the NHL in isolation, and it just seems like when you're playing all these teams in your division, who are the teams that know you best, you don't get a night off in the sense that, hey, if the Flyers go play Edmonton for one game in January, they don't go crazy with scouting, and it's not the hardest game for them to play. But when you're playing these teams night after night now, and they all know your problems, and they can look up everything on video, every player is getting exploited more than they ever have. And it's the young ones that are really, if they're not ready, they're the ones that are taking the brunt of it.
Now, I don't know whether we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when I think it was rumored out there, and I didn't think it was serious. But if you look at the San Jose Sharks and the bunch of boat anchor contracts that they have, there was a lot of talk about Brent Burns and Philadelphia. And I don't know how serious that was, if it was even realistic. But if you're talking about, going big or going home, that's your going big guy. He's a right shot, top pairing defenseman with an offensive gift. The problem is that he's got three more years at $8 million. I don't know how the hell Chuck Fletcher would fit that contract under the cap. But if you're going to go for a top pairing guy and a right-handed guy, then that might make some sense.
You'd have to move a guy like JVR who
might
actually
you can't move him this year. That's the funny thing.
You'd probably have to move Gostisbehere in the deal, and either have San Jose retain a couple $1 million in salary or throw in somebody else to balance out the books. And I don't know if they're willing to do that either.
Yeah, it gets complicated, but maybe that is the type of move Comcast is looking for. I am concerned with that stuff because I don't like lack of patience. I very rarely see those deals actually pay off. I would say the Chris Pronger one did. It's just an unfortunate incident, but again, that's why I don't like that idea of that one's, they didn't give up too much, I guess. They had an abundance, but, they were bankrupt after that. I mean, there was nothing in this organization to restart everything. And not that the Flyers are there, but I don't want to start getting in that pattern again.
I'll tell you what your worst nightmare is. We really haven't heard much from Dave Scott at all this year. The worst nightmare is all of a sudden he decides like a week before the trade deadline to
start talking. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. You start seeing articles with Dave Scott because then he wants to be heard, and that's not a good sign. And I think we'll take it back to Hextall. I think that was Hextall's biggest problem is communication with corporate. I don't think he was that into it, and I don't blame him. But at the end of the day, they kind of can step in. I just worry that they make us make the wrong move. Like, again, I love Farabee. You look at the impact a guy like that has. People get excited because he's really young and he's doing it now, but some guys don't develop at that same age, and a corporation might not look at it that way. They might throw away a guy that really just needs another year or two, and he'll probably be a superstar or a star player, and they're just going to be like, "Well, we want to win now." And then we don't make the playoffs, or we fall short, and then in 2 years we have to watch that guy pummel us every season, and it's like I don't want to get into that pattern.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't move Farabee. I wouldn't move Morgan Frost. I wouldn't move Morgan Frost. I would move Nolan Patrick simply because there are still some question marks about his injury situation. Mm-hmm. I think he can be a very good player in this league, but he's not having a very good year right now. And you have to pay a price to get that one piece that you need. And that might be the price that Fletcher is willing to pay. It's not his draft pick. It's somebody else's draft pick. So why not move him?
I want to go back to something you said, and I don't know why I remember this, but I definitely remember this. You said something about Nolan Patrick a few years ago. I think it was during his draft year, and you can tell I actually listened. You were talking about the fact that he shouldn't have been on the Flyers roster. Like before he made the Flyers team, you were like, he shouldn't be on this team. Like they're probably going to send him back because why would you have a kid go through surgery and then keep him in the NHL? I completely agree with that statement. Come full circle. And I only say this is how many kids, and I'll include Farabee, I'll include Frost, I'll include any young kid in the league can go into a season with abdominal core surgery,
right,
deal with a head case injury, and still persevere and be in the NHL. None of them would have stayed in the NHL. Most of them would have been sent back immediately, which I think is part of the problem. But I kind of see in Patrick's sense is like he's the same draft class as Frost, and Frost can't even make the NHL. And this kid's making it through the pain. So that's why I'm like, do we have another Sean Couturier who's dealing with injury problems, which is a real issue? Or, is it a guy who maybe fade out with injury problems? But that's my thing where I'm like, I'd rather bet on the guy turning into to be another Couturier. Because
I'm looking at Patrick the same way as Crosby when he had all those concussions. Because even though Patrick didn't have what we call a concussion, but because of the migraines, I'm looking at him in that same vein, and I think his offense will return because I see him doing all the right things, but I don't think it's going to be this year.
No.
And Russ can attest to this. I've always been an advocate of slow development for these players. Mm-hmm. Carter Hart, like when they fired Hextall and Carter Hart was immediately rushed to the NHL, Russ and I both said, this is a mistake. Maybe not now, but a couple years from now. And what the hell is happening right now? He's having consistency issues. And I think that's because he was rushed. So, yes, if a player is hurt, you give him time. You let him develop. You let him go to the American Hockey League. You let him learn. You build a base of experience, and then you bring them. And it paid off for Farabee. And I know different players are different. Farabee was rushed, and
he's unique.
He's a unique player, and he's played
personality-wise, very unique.
Most players, Austin Matthews can do that because he's a superstar and he's 18 years old and he's big as a house. But a lot of players can't do that.
Yeah.
Nathan McKinnon didn't even do that. I mean, nobody thought that he would be the superior player that he is today off the first season. You're like, oh yeah, I guess he could be a great player.
And he took a step back in his third season, and Colorado is thanking God for it because then they got him cheap at $6.25 million. And now, they had him for like 5 years at a bargain basement price.
Yariv, I'll warn you, Anna's getting hungry. If you got a question or two prospect wise,
I was gonna say, actually, that's a great place. I was looking at the time. This is a great place to end it. All right. Well, thank you for the both of you coming on. I'm going to continue the segment by myself. So don't worry about that. But thank you for both coming on. I mean, I'll have you guys on again. This was really fun, and yeah, we'll do more stuff in the future. So thank you, Mike and Russ. So let's get into it. That was a really interesting conversation with Russ and Mike, and it was honestly fun to have because I get to have I used to listen to them quite often, so to be able to just kind of sit back and have the conversation, be able to fill in. Now, you notice a lot of stuff I said there. I fight back against the trade deadline. I fight back against the need to suddenly want to get better and be reactive. Because I can come up with an argument against almost any situation if I really want to. I can rationalize almost anything. And we all can. It's not really the fault of any one of us or any single media person or anything like that. We all have things that we want. We all have insecurities about our hockey team, just like we do ourselves, right? So we look at players, we pick players apart, no doubt about it, right? We go, this guy's not fast enough. This guy doesn't have it. This guy, but we see it fluctuates. Like, look at JVR. Nobody thought JVR would be maybe the best player on the team this year. I mean, the guy overall, every single night has been bringing it. This is the best he's ever looked, and he is a former second-round pick. He is above 30. Keep that stuff in mind when you guys say he's 30 years old. This is the stuff I keep talking about. Show me the consistency in what everybody's talking about, and I still don't see the young man's game argument because all I see is kids getting their butts kicked left and right. So here's the thing. The Flyers are a good team. They are a good team. Are they good right now? I would say they are not playing like a good team. And the way you can see that reflected is that good players who are good, like guys like Sean Couturier, who won a Selke trophy. Guys like Ivan Provorov, who is clearly an excellent defenseman, regardless of what number you think he is, right? It doesn't matter if he's a 1 or a 2. Timonen was never a number 1 defenseman, but clearly was an amazing defenseman. You don't have to be perfect to be a great player. The team is not playing well as a whole. Certain guys are stepping up. As we saw in last night's game, Jake Voracek and Claude Giroux, I would argue Giroux has been great almost every game, have really, they stepped it up and they kind of carried the team offensively. I think we're going to see some line changing because of that over time, especially. But these are the things that need to happen, is that guys have to play better. That's it. It's as simple as that. They have the talent. You guys can say they don't have the talent. They do. They do have the talent. We had it last year, right? We had it last year to go on that run and to get everybody all excited. We had it to get everybody excited in the preseason. We had enough to be ranked by a lot of teams, to be high up there. And guys like JVR, they were supposed to be out of town, not supposed to be overly productive. Lindblom is not a 4th line player. Now, given obviously he is, with all the muscle mass loss and everything, if you guys want to check it out, actually Lappy's got some quotes about it, but that's a given. That's a given. And I've been talking about the same thing with Nolan Patrick. You don't like it. It doesn't matter if you don't like it or not. It doesn't matter if you're upset that Nolan Patrick isn't fast enough or doesn't have the energy to do everything he needs to do. It's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. And if you're going to trade him, you're going to trade him for a loss. You're going to trade him for a loss. What is the point of that? You know that the kid hasn't had enough time to train. You're telling me he had enough time to sit off and play all those scrimmages and build his endurance and get a really good offseason the way somebody like Farabee would, and look at the jump that Farabee was able to make with a proper offseason. These are things that are crucial. So it's crucial to building a championship team. So I would look at everything as kind of a mess this year. I mean, obviously the break hurt the Flyers, the injuries hurt the Flyers, but these are kind of excuses. I mean, the Islanders played poorly. Now they're on a 9-game win streak, right? And the Islanders are not, despite what anybody wants to think, they are not more talented than the Flyers. They don't have more talented than the Flyers. Just not true. Now, they have a very good team. They have an exceptional coach and a culture that they managed to instill from top down, which seems to be a level of excellence that, quite frankly, this franchise hasn't been able to hit in quite a while, because you got to be pretty consistent to be that good all the time when you don't have the talent to be leading your division and you still are. That is more interesting to me. Is why are our better players not playing exceptionally? Not can I swap out this guy for another guy? I'm looking at, okay, well, what is the problem? What is the issue then? I have the talent. Okay, I have Provorov. I have Ghost. I have Sanheim. I have Myers. Remember all these big names? We've been talking about them for a few years, right? I have Braun, who we all know is a good bottom pairing defenseman. Even if he's playing a number 4 guy, he's not the worst. We had Haig, who's supposed to be a first-round pick at one point, younger defenseman. Now he's being benched. We have Gustafsson, a former 65-point defenseman, getting $3 million a year. Got offensive talent, plays terrible defense so far. I'm open to him playing better. I mean, the names alone there, that's enough to be competitive defensively, better than we've been. Without a doubt. Yes, we're missing Niskanen. Yes, he's stabilizing. Okay. But we've added other talent, and other players are playing better than last year, like JVR, who's playing better defensively as well. Who, with him on top and Farabee up top, that essentially creates a new top line. Oh, what was the top line last year? Oh, it was Lindblom and TK with pretty much anybody, right? Oh, no. It was Giroux and Voracek with everybody. And we didn't even have Patrick. And then we lost Lindblom. We had Lawton playing out of position. Yeah, we were still better. And this is my whole point. The reason I bring up all these things, and you guys can pick apart this team or whatnot, the reality is it's execution. These are simple, stupid plays. And I think a lot of these players know that. Like, yes, the opponents are good, but we're watching a loss of focus as a team. I don't mean individually. Do I think that these guys are sitting there staring at the crowd? No, they're all highly trained athletes. Yes, maybe some of them are a little lazier than others, but some of them are a lot harder working than the others. Some of them play 30 minutes a night like Ivan Provorov and train meticulously. Some of them are machines like that, you know? So if I'm watching them make simple mistakes, why are these happening? Right? And I look at maybe the schedule. I look at the schedule in the sense that what happened to our team in between. Not that we have it more burdened than other teams, but a lack of focus comes from a lack of practices, maybe the proper practices. I don't know. I'm not going to pick apart the coaching staff. But again, these are all things that really incrementally are what bring your team down and what causes people to want to throw players away. Nobody's talking about throwing away Phil Myers yet, but if he does this all season, you know people are going to be talking about trading him, especially for this trade deadline. Well, signed him for a few years. He's struggling now. We need another defenseman. Let's just go for it, right? There's a plan to all this stuff. Now, I'm not saying we can't deviate from the plan, and there's going to be some talent out there, and I don't know what big names are available. I mean, like Drew Doughty was thrown out there. He's not going to be available. But if a guy like that is available, I'll be honest with you, I'm looking to trade for him. With the roster that we have, that is the type of player who probably would turn you into a definite playoff team, but a contender. I do think the Flyers are on the brink of that, but they need to play better. And I think Chuck Fletcher might consider that with this roster. You might look at the roster and go, well, they're not playing that well. Do I really want to invest that much in them? I don't know. You think about the way they've been playing of lately. Like, it doesn't gleam enthusiasm for winning. And I don't think that will stay. But it is disheartening when you see it. It's easy to get caught up in it. It's easy to think, oh, this is my team. But as Coach Pat Riley said, they beat us for the team that we are right now. This is who the Flyers are right now. It's not who they will be. It's not what they can be tomorrow. But it's what they are right now. They make mistakes. They've been a team making a lot of mistakes this year. But that doesn't mean that they have to be the team that makes mistakes all year long. For instance, the power play. I complained about it a lot. It's changed a little bit. I don't know if anybody's noticed of late. And it's been successful. Who's been one of the key elements of that? Could it be Claude Giroux? It's like it has to be rocket science. And I think about these things, and I look for incremental change. I look for incremental growth within the team, and I think that's really what we need to focus on right now. A trade is probably coming, and it should come. We're a good team. We're outside of a playoff spot. We're up against tough teams. We have a good spot. I want to make it in. I want to squeeze in. I don't care if the worst record in the league. This team is talented enough to win a Stanley Cup, in my opinion, but playing the way they're playing, no. Playing the way they're playing, they're not even going to make the playoffs. We've seen some changes of that of late, but my goodness. I mean, some of these defensive breakdowns are they're completely unacceptable. They're frustrating. And I'm not even picking, I know most people think I'm picking on Ghost. I'm really not. I'm not picking on Ghost. And I'm not picking on any one player. I see it as a team issue. When I see these goals, I don't go, oh, why was Ghost beat? I go, why is he the only guy? That's the stuff that's driving me nuts. Why is he the only guy there? Everybody else is looking at it, just paying attention to that one guy. I'm like, hey, this is a team sport. There are 5 guys on the ice with you, 6 if you include your goalie. Your goalie's not going to be there to help you. So where's everybody else? And I bring it up all the time. When the Flyers are at their worst, players are isolated by themselves. Look for it. If they're isolated, they're not doing anything. They're shut down. What good is it if Claude Giroux has the puck in the offensive zone in the corner if he's the only one there? They're going to shut that play down in 30 seconds. This team needs to move up the ice as a team. They have the talent. Maybe they don't lack the poise right now. I mean, if you look at a certain play from Sanheim against the Rangers the other night, I mean, he's essentially just skating and I almost saw him falling before he fell. And that has nothing to do with his talent. He is one of the best skaters. I would even argue in the league. He is an exceptional skater. That is a mental thing. And that I can only laugh because people are probably going to be like, what do you mean it's mental? It's mental. Watch his footwork normally during practice. He's exceptional. He's a kid. I've said it. If you go watch the player profile video, it's almost 2 years old now. He is a kid that is based on confidence. If his confidence is not high, his game just is a whole different game. He goes from being again, a number 4 guy to it's a number 1 defenseman. So it's huge. It's a huge gap for him. You see the mental gymnastics that these guys are playing. It's happening. Matt Niskanen obviously was a selling force. So much that Nate Prosser is in the lineup now. Mark Friedman is gone. Haig is sitting. Gustafsson can't play. That's why this team needs a defenseman. He doesn't have to be. You're not giving up Patrick in a first. Not for Ekholm, at least. If you're giving up Patrick in a first, you better be getting a super. You better be getting Drew Doughty back. You better be getting Shea Weber. You better getting, and those guys are older too. You better be getting a guy that's you're locked in. You know what I mean? You're ready to win. Even Brent Burns, I'm not giving you Nolan Patrick. I know everybody wants to quit on this kid. I'm not even close to quitting on Nolan Patrick. Just so anybody's aware, I'd be thoroughly upset if he's traded, unless the value in my eyes, I guess, would be equal. You don't typically win those type of trades. So unless I'm getting Jack Hughes or something in the return, I'm just not really interested in any stuff like this right now. Everybody else might be. I'm not. Again, I was thinking about this concept the other day. You want to win a championship. What are the odds, statistical odds that you win a championship? Let's say you're the best team in the league. You're by far, let's say you're Tampa Bay. What do you have, a 10% chance? I would say that's even really high. But you have a 10% chance to win that year. I don't even know what the Vegas odds are. I don't care. This math can be simplified enough for you to understand what I'm talking about. Let's say you have a 10% chance. And that's a great chance. If Flyers had a 10% chance to win, that'd be awesome. So they don't have that, but let's just say they do. Okay. So we have a 10% chance this year. Okay. That's 1 year. Now, if I can be competitive over 6 years, 7, 8, 9, 10, by building a core, a deep system that consistently puts out talent, consistently performs, if I can do that and change the culture of my team, right? by not removing players but adding, I give myself a percentage every year. And if you look at that over a 10-year span, that's a little bit different than I have a 10% chance. And that's how I think of all these things. I know everybody looks at things as one season, and I get it. I mean, I'm not saying not to trade, and I would trade my first-round pick this year for a player. Like, don't get me wrong. First-round pick and a pretty good prospect to get a player for this team. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. But there is a level of desperation that I do not have. And if the Flyers were to continue to play the way that they are playing, and I saw no progress, and this team was playing as well as the New York Rangers, and they were a good amount of points out of the playoff spot, I would say put a nail in them. They're done. Start next year. I would not invest that. And I would reevaluate what I have. And then I would push hard in that next offseason. Because if I'm going to be saving those assets, I'm damn well using them the following year. So that's kind of where I see the Flyers. The Flyers are on their way to make moves. They recognize something. Niskanen was not supposed to leave early. I mean, that was a great trade. That was a great trade by Chuck Fletcher. And maybe it wouldn't have solved all our problems, but it's clearly something this team needs. Stability on the back end. I mean, we had it with guys like Tiemann in the past. Even a guy like Braden Coburn would be nice, like right now. But if you can bring in a guy like Kimmo Timonen, and that's a high value. But we didn't give up too much to get Kimmo Timonen. Essentially give up a first-round pick for him, but he's a stud defenseman when we got him. I mean, I think he was like 28, 29. I don't think he was that old. Again, you're looking at the Ekholm thing. I think if we can give up a first. Maybe a guy like Wyatt Wiley, who, again, I'm not excited to get rid of. And maybe that's not enough. I'm sure they'll want a guy like Zamula, like I was saying earlier. I think it's very interesting. I think they'll probably want more than that for Ekholm, but who says they're going to get it? There's a lot of financial issues this year. There's a lot of issues with us even bringing over cap. So I'm going to ask you to take maybe Eric Gustafsson, or maybe I'm going to trade Robert Haig, which I'm not that excited about because he's best friends with Oscar Lindblom, who I want to recover and become the player that he was last year, who, if he was playing better this year, this team would be even tougher. And again, not realistic with Lindblom and Patrick. I've said it in my videos. I've said it on the podcast. I'm going to say it again right now. I'll give you an example. I have started running. I've been running heavily for almost 3 months now. And I mean heavily as in I run about 5-6 days a week. I started off doing about a mile and a half, 2 miles per run, and I'm doing about 2.5 to now up to 6 miles per run. And again, I'm doing that multiple days a week. I'm trying to tone that down actually now to 4 because I think I've taken it too far. But I'm trying to improve quickly. Like I get into this stuff, and this is the type of stuff I do. I'm obviously training very hard. I also lift. I do everything. I eat right. I do this stuff. I stretch. I'm into it. So I'm doing it. I've been studying it for a while. I mean, I've definitely been working out. Experienced for over a decade. So let's say 12 years. Changing my body, everything, the stuff I talk about in the Always Level Up podcast, that same stuff. That's been a journey for me, right? And you figure some of these athletes are 21 years old. How long have they really been studying this stuff? Let's say about a decade, 12 years, 13, let's give them 15 years, let's say their whole life. They're very experienced at this. Now, I'm not an amateur, at least completely. I'm an amateur a little bit in running, but I'm like learning. I've improved my speed quite a bit. Not that much. That's my point. There's nothing I can do to speed up my process. I'm in the best shape of my life. I've gotten my times down. But if you put me near a runner, I'm going to get my butt kicked. Like a real runner, they're going to kill me. They're going to run circles around me. Their pace at least a minute and a half less than me. I mean, you're talking about people who run competitively. They're running like 7-minute, 6-minute paces. I'm doing 8.5, 8-minute paces for 6 miles. Whatever, 8.5 for 6 miles, 9 minutes. That's a lot. That's for me. That's like incredible. That's what I'll be better than that. But there are people who destroy my time, and it's going to take me a while to get better. I started off in I think 10.5-minute paces. Again, this has only been like a 3-month thing so far, right? But I'm going to keep going. We'll see how I progress. But look how much. And again, so let's add that to Nolan Patrick, who didn't even have an offseason. Wasn't even allowed to train properly the way that he really wants to. So to stay off the ice most of the time, in and out, not even sure what his future was going to be. Meanwhile, majority of young players on the team are struggling to some degree. Seems like most young players are struggling this year, which makes sense. Especially after Russ's points with scouting. And, I think about that stuff, and that's where I'm like, everything is too gray. Everything's too deep. It's too granular to throw surface level statements like they're not deep enough. That some teams are not deep enough. It's not like I'm saying that there are cases where the Flyers, they are a better team than they're playing. There are other great teams that aren't playing that well either. There are some teams that take a jump. There's some teams that are just on it right now. It's a weird year. It's a weird hockey season. I think the Flyers did some good things against the Rangers the other night, but it was a fun game to some degree. It was great to see Voracek and Giroux kind of step up like old times and just kind of take over the game. But goddamn, I can't watch this team play defense like that. That's killing me. Every single time that they blow a lead, every single time, I'm like, this is not an individual's fault. This is not Ghost's fault. This is not Hart's fault, and Hart's numbers are not reflective of his game this season. I don't care what analyst you put in front of me. I don't care. I don't think Hart has had the best year. The way this team is playing defense is bad. There have been times in this section where you are leaving this kid high and all the time. They did a little less against Elliott, and I would argue Elliott's had a better season, but Elliott's actually played very well at times. This team's defense has stunk. And I don't mean the defense. I mean the team defense has stunk. The commitment to defense, to slowing the game down after you scored, to slowing the game down when you're leading, to not making that extra pass when you should be back, to be focused on D when you're winning. It's these lapses in the team's play that's killing them. It's not the team's talent. It's not their ceiling. It's not even their floor. It's this in between that's killing them. They'll play really well in 2 periods and then just look like a completely different team for 1 period. That's not something we saw last year. These defensive breakdowns were not here to the same degree. And I don't think it's just because Matt Niskanen is gone. If it is, then you better make that goddamn trade soon. Because that means these players aren't that very, very good. And I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think that Chuck Fletcher thinks that's the case. In fact, I would think that they're probably going, what the heck are we doing wrong? I don't get it. Either way, I would say stay patient. The Flyers have a lot of games against New York teams coming up against the Rangers, the Sabres, the Devils. They have an opportunity here to really catch the other teams. So look for that to, I hope, happen. I mean, I'm expecting it to happen. My expectations are that it will happen. This is a better team than them. Expect them to win more games, build momentum, build that confidence. Speaking of building momentum and building confidence, I do want to talk about the Phantoms for a little bit. I haven't had enough time to watch them, kind of just following along. I watched a little bit of games here and there, but it's a little bit harder this year. I've just been super busy with the site. The site's been growing immensely. It's been kind of wild. And the new podcast, just all this stuff. So I only had not as much time to watch the Phantoms as I usually do, but it's been interesting because I'm really excited about somebody who just came back, Wade Allison. Now, Wade Allison's a guy who's had so much trouble staying healthy. But when he's healthy, he's good. He already had a goal the other night. There's a good chance that this kid's going to be NHL ready like next year. If he could stay healthy, that's a humongous issue with him. Jamie Baskow and I, we talk about it all the time. It's like that is his biggest thing. Unless he gets healthy, screw the pooch on him. But he's really, really good outside of that. So he's playing a little bit now. Let's see how he turns out. Lazinski's playing well. I don't think the Flyers are in any rush. I think they were really hoping Morgan Frost would be ready. He was with the team. But the Flyers aren't really lacking talent. This isn't an issue of talent. This is not an issue of... It can't be. It can't be. You got the same pieces last year plus. All you're missing is one player. Come on. Come on. One player and you're worse. Give me a break. The Penguins lose Crosby. They play better. Come on. Like, this is not real. Good teams play well. That means the players, all of them, the ones that you nitpick, that means they play well too. That means everybody needs to play well. When they're a good team, everybody plays well. That's the idea. There's a lot of guys. There's 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, and 1 goalie. Right? And hopefully you don't need your backup. They all need to play well to win. They all need to be good to win a championship. I've said it over and over again. There is no such thing as getting by on think about it every time the Flyers have tried to, they didn't have a good enough goalie or they didn't have a good enough defense, short a couple pairing, a couple defensemen, short a goalie, yeah, when you're short stuff, you don't win a championship. Flyers are not a bunch of pieces away from winning, but it's a mindset. It's a mindset. The mindset hasn't been here this year, even when they've been good. It hasn't been consistent. But that's okay. Because the Flyers were worse in the first half of last season. It's just the stakes are higher. The division is tougher this year. The league is just a disaster of a mess due to COVID. And just everything is harder. Right? And then you lose the leader of your D outside. He really was, though. I mean, he's the veteran. Provorov can't be a leader when he's the youngest guy, It's like it sounds good, but it's just not the truth. That's why giving a guy like McDavid a captaincy, it's like, yeah, it's great, but you see what the Oilers are. Like, you guys are kidding yourself. Like, they're kids. You need adults, man. And this is coming from a 33-year-old who I need adults around. I need people who are more mature and are better at handling stuff than I am. You got to think about that with these kids. But let's think about it this way. Flyers have a bunch of games coming up. They need to play better. The PK, the power play, they're doing better. Everything's trending upwards. The Flyers are not wrong, but the results are not there yet. Having said that, the margin for error is small this year. They don't have a lot of time to waste. And guys like Claude Giroux are stepping up. That's a good sign. It is a great sign. But it can't just be Giroux. It can't just be Giroux. It has to be everybody together. Everyone. That's why it doesn't help you to nitpick and bash individually. It won't help you. Writing an article about getting rid of a player at loss or a Facebook post about, hey, get this guy off this team now. These are not real. These are not real. These are not decisions that make you better. Removing players from your team doesn't make you better. Adding to your team can make you better. Correct. Adding the right pieces can make you better. Unless that guy is a locker cancer, which is very rare and typically not even usually true. Sometimes that player is just bad mouth. He goes to another team and everybody loves him. Or you find out the locker room he left had problems overall. There's all these type of scenarios we want to nitpick on these guys. It's frustrating. I get it. I mean, I'm with you guys. I mean, it's hard to watch the team at times when they give up those breakdowns. It kills me. It sits in my gut the entire game. Defense is so important to winning a championship. It is crucial to winning. Teams can always score goals. You have to stop them. We have enough talent to score. We know that. We were giving up way too many goals and way too many odd man rushes. This stuff is unacceptable. These are the problems from 2 years ago. These are the problems from Hackstall. That's how I can tell you it's not all Hacksaw's fault either. And how things don't work that way. These are just, when a team isn't playing well, these are typically the symptoms of a team who's not playing well. But again, it's very rare to see a team play as best as they can play all year round, or even to not struggle. Again, like I've said this before, if you are not suffering as a team, you will not succeed together. And there's no doubt about that. So don't panic because you're watching your team suffer. I mean, I understand why people are upset. I mean, we're outside of a playoff spot. This is unacceptable in my mind. Let's get out of it. Let's get aggressive. Let's do the right things. Let's do smart moves. We got to make a trade. Let's make it. Let's make a smart trade. Let's not make a desperate trade. Let's make a trade that not only makes us better this year, hopefully makes us better next year. Like, let's get more creative. Well, what if I don't want Ekholm? What if I want Roman Josi? I'm kind of kidding. They're never going to trade Roman Josi. But you guys understand what I'm talking about? What if I want a better defenseman? Okay, you want my first-round pick in Zamula? I don't want Ekholm. I want Ellis. This is my mindset if I'm GM. Not, hey, Ghost is really not that good, so I'm going to throw in Ghost. And Voracek gets paid too much, right? Voracek and Jay O'Brien, he had an off year last year. He's a little bit late for me. I don't like I don't like waiting that long. So let's throw him in that mix too. And we have enough picks and young players. So let's just throw in a second round pick as well. I'll take that for whatever you got. Just give me one of your good players. Give me one of your best 5. I'll take that. That stuff to me is a joke. If you're going to make a trade, you better be trying to win that trade. I'm not interested in losing at any point. That includes losing a trade. I don't get excited when we lose. I don't even get excited when we buy out McDonald. That bothered me. Did we get better after we got rid of McDonald? There's a good question. He wasn't very good. But what if McDonald played 13 minutes a night? And wasn't playing 20, 21, 22 minutes a night, which is insane to play that guy 22 minutes a night. It's just mean. He's not even physically strong enough to handle majority of defensemen in the NHL. But he was a good bottom pairing defenseman. Definitely a phenomenal AHL defenseman. If everybody ever saw his AHL numbers, they're just out of this world. I don't want McDonald on this team anymore. But again, we bought him out. Did we get better because we bought him out? I don't know. I don't really see as removing players getting better. I think there's a good trade to be made out there. I think we're going to make it. I think the Flyers are looking into it. Maybe Dennis Savard is the right guy. I think he'd probably look for a right-hand guy. I hope it's not the popular pick that is an overpayment. I'm not interested, and I don't think your team is very good if you need that to win a Stanley Cup. Now, if you're Tampa Bay and you want to go all out because you lost in the first round the year before, and your team is already so good that you're like, I cannot afford to do this because we've lost year after year after year, which, by the way, it wasn't one failure in the early round. It was they had one of the best teams in the league for several years in a row. And this is what I was talking about in the earlier concept where you're trying to win every year. They weren't able to get it done. So they're like, all right, well, we can't afford to do this anymore. We had the best team in the league the year before. We were good every year before that. We're one of the favorites every year. We finally thought we had the best team in the league. We went and we lose in the first round. This is unacceptable. Now I'm desperate. Now I'm trading a first and foot for Blake Coleman. Because I'm desperate now. And it paid off. Look how good that team is prior to making those trades. If the Flyers are playing the way that they're playing, and you're going to go out and you're going to shell something out for a player, and they fall short, man, are you going to look stupid. Patience is the name of the game. Patience is the name of the game. I know everybody hates that. I don't blame them. And quite frankly, the Flyers don't make the playoffs this year. Just like everybody else, I'm going to be asking for an upgrade as well because we're going to need it. And after this expansion mess is going to be through, there's going to be some changes on this team, and this team might lose JVR to it or somebody else. I have no idea what they're going to do at this point. JVR's played so well, I don't even know what you do with him. You know? I mean, he's playing well enough to get protected, I'll tell you that much, and I wasn't anticipating protecting him. You know? Things to think about. We'll talk about it next week. I'll bring on more guests, more episodes. I think next week probably have maybe more Flyers nitty gritty crew, and then I'll get back to mixing it up. I've been doing interviews with other people. I got a Curtis Gabriel Always Level Up episode coming out as well. It's going to be right around the time that this episode comes out. So probably come out maybe a day after. So again, check that out. That's an awesome interview with former Flyer Flyer Phantom, the current San Jose Shark, Curtis Gabriel. So that was actually an awesome conversation. Yeah, I really like that guy. So that was great. Great conversation. He's a great dude. And I hope you guys enjoy it. You'll have to check it out. Just make sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button if you can for me. It's super helpful when everybody does that. It just makes the videos kind of more viral, whatever. Just wanted to get it recommended to people. I'm not very good at social media. I don't even really like social media. I don't know if people really notice that. I'm not really huge on it. Like I'm Twitter a little bit. Like, Jamie's got like thousands of followers. I don't even have 1,000. I don't like social media. I work in tech, just so everybody knows. I work in social media. I want to make that stuff and I don't want to use it. So that's a problem with me. But I am trying to share as much as I can. That's why I try to do these videos. I like talking more than using social media. If I'm writing articles, they take me a long time because I go too in depth, because you can see I talk for long periods of time. So my writing does the exact same problem. But, if you guys want any other stuff from me, if you have any things you're interested in even, hearing about, video recommendations, you can shoot them down here. I'll take a look, especially if it's stuff I already know and I don't have to do a ton of research. I can just pop out a video quickly. This stuff's really easy. So, if you guys ever want stuff like that, shoot it over, send me a tweet, whatever. I don't care. Trying to make it more interactive. Again, I'm not really good at social media. So if you guys want to talk to me, you gotta put the effort in a little bit. Unfortunately, I'm not great at it. I'll try to get better. I'm trying. But as I watch what it does to society, I'm less interested. I'm less interested as I get older. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future, but I'm definitely not going to stop these videos. I'm definitely not going to stop the podcast. And Jamie and I are definitely not stopping this brand. Thank you, everybody. We love you guys so much. Thank you for liking, subscribing, watching, listening, reading. Check out Lance Green's latest article on Curtis Gabriel as well. Did really well. Got a shout out from Curtis as well. And appropriate, because after everything I said, Curtis was not very appreciated when he came here. And we need a guy like that now. And it's funny how, we wish he was here. He's going to have a weird way of coming full circle. All right. Back for more next week. Love you guys. Remember to always stay gritty.